When the Outlaw Josey Wales rode into theaters, it wasn't just another Western. The film arrived at a time when audiences were losing interest in the genre, yet it managed to win them back with raw emotion, unforgettable characters, and Clint Eastwood at the peak of his powers. Behind its dust, gun smoke, and wide landscapes lies a story filled with chaos, unexpected choices, and long-lasting influence. Today, we're uncovering 25 secrets hidden for decades about the making of this unforgettable classic. Number 1. The novel that slipped through. It all began with a book that almost never got noticed. Clint Eastwood's production office was flooded with manuscripts on a daily basis, and most were sent back unopened. Yet one unusual submission stood out, a novel titled The Rebel Outlaw, Josey Wales. The attached cover letter was handwritten and spoke about Eastwood's kind eyes, asking humbly for his consideration. That personal touch was enough for producer Robert Daly to take it home and read. What he found inside was a gripping tale of loss, vengeance, and resilience, a story that seemed perfectly suited for Eastwood. Daly quickly sent the book to him, and Eastwood immediately recognized the potential. He was so convinced of its value that he personally contributed money to secure the screen rights. It was an uncommon move, showing just how strongly he felt about the material. This small twist of fate set the entire film in motion. Without that unique letter and Daly's curiosity, The Outlaw Josey Wales might never have been made, leaving behind one of the greatest westerns untold. Number 2. The author's shocking past. The book that inspired The Outlaw Josey Wales came from a writer who seemed mysterious at first. Known as Forrest Carter, he was presented as a Cherokee author with deep cultural roots, and his novel was praised for its rugged authenticity. The success even led to a re-release of the book under a new title, Gone to Texas, opening doors for Carter to publish more works, including the bestseller The Education of Little Tree, which many readers believed was his personal memoir. But years later, an unexpected truth emerged. Forrest Carter was not who he claimed to be. His real name was Asa Earl Carter, and his past revealed a man who had once been deeply involved in divisive politics. The revelation stunned fans and critics alike, raising questions about the identity behind the stories. Despite the troubling discovery, the legacy of Josey Wales endured. What mattered most to audiences was the timeless tale of resilience and survival, not the personal history of its creator. Still, the revelation added a complicated layer to the origins of a cinematic masterpiece. Number 3. Kaufman's vision for Josey. Before Clint Eastwood took full control, the film was shaped by director Philip Kaufman, who had a clear vision for how the story should unfold. A passionate admirer of the novel, Kaufman wanted to keep the screenplay as faithful to the source as possible. His version emphasized Josey as a hardened, straight-talking survivor, while also preserving the colorful side characters like Lone Wait, Laura Lee, Little Moonlight, and Grandma Sarah. Kaufman's script aimed to remove heavy political overtones, while still capturing the sense of division that followed the Civil War. He worked to balance action with depth, creating a narrative that felt both authentic and emotionally layered. Even his decision to retain the Union soldiers as an ongoing threat came from a desire to heighten tension and provide a climactic showdown at the end. Although Kaufman's time on the project was cut short, much of his groundwork remained in the final product. His attention to detail and early choices laid the foundation for the Western that audiences ultimately embraced. Number 4. Casting against the odds. Securing the right actress for the role of Laura Lee proved to be one of the first major hurdles in production. The character was written as a young woman of about 22, yet Clint Eastwood insisted on casting Sondra Locke, who at the time was 32. For some on the production, especially director Philip Kaufman, this choice seemed puzzling. He questioned whether audiences would accept Locke in such a youthful role, and tensions began to build around the decision. Eastwood, however, stood firmly by his choice. He believed Locke brought a sensitivity and strength that perfectly balanced the character's vulnerability. Casting her wasn't just about looks or age. It was about the emotional resonance she could bring to the screen. That conviction carried enough weight to override Kaufman's objections. The decision ultimately paid off. Locke's performance brought warmth and humanity to the story, making Laura Lee a memorable part of the film. While the casting may have been controversial at the time, it demonstrated Eastwood's willingness to trust his instincts, even when others doubted them. Number 5. Western shot in autumn shadows. One of the film's most striking qualities is its atmosphere, and that wasn't by accident. Clint Eastwood scheduled production to take place in the fall, a time when natural light created long shadows and richer tones across the landscapes. Rather than relying heavily on artificial lighting, cinematographer Bruce Surtees worked closely with Eastwood to let nature do much of the visual work. The result was a look that felt earthy, grounded, and hauntingly beautiful. The choice also set the Outlaw Josey Wales apart from many other westerns of its era. While other productions often filmed under harsh summer sun or used bright stage lighting, this movie embraced muted skies and natural contrast. It added weight to the story, reflecting the darker themes of loss and survival woven through Josey's journey. Audiences may not have realized it at the time, but the decision to film in autumn gave the movie a timeless texture. Those dusky shadows became part of its signature style, helping to define the somber yet heroic tone that made the Western unforgettable. Number 6. Eastwood fires the director. Tension on set quickly reached a breaking point. Philip Kaufman, the original director, had a precise and methodical approach, often spending hours to capture a single scene exactly as he envisioned. Clint Eastwood, on the other hand, preferred efficiency, shooting quickly and trusting instinct over meticulous planning. Their clashing styles created frustration for the cast and crew, and it soon became clear the partnership wasn't working. The tipping moment came after a disagreement over a scene in the desert. Eastwood felt Kaufman had lost control, and his dissatisfaction grew as similar issues piled up. Eventually, Eastwood called for a private meeting with Kaufman and made a bold decision. He removed him from the project entirely, just 10 days into filming. The move shocked many on the set, as it was rare for a leading actor to take over directing duties mid-production. Yet Eastwood stepped in seamlessly, guiding the film from that point forward. It was a risky gamble, but one that ultimately turned the Outlaw Josey Wales into a defining work of his career. Number 7. A secret rivalry for Locke's affection. Behind the camera, personal feelings began to complicate professional decisions. During production, whispers spread that both Clint Eastwood and Philip Kaufman developed an interest in Sondra Locke. Kaufman had initially resisted her casting, questioning whether she was right for the role. But once she was on set, his attitude appeared to change. Some crew members noticed he seemed especially attentive toward her, fueling quiet speculation. At the same time, Eastwood was forming his own bond with Locke. Their connection grew during the film, and in the years that followed, the two would go on to star together in multiple movies while maintaining a long relationship. Looking back, the casting choice that once seemed controversial turned into a pivotal moment in both their personal and professional lives. Though much of this dynamic remained unspoken during filming, the atmosphere on set was said to have been shaped by the tension. The possibility of a rivalry only deepened the already complex story of the Outlaw Josey Wales' troubled production. Number 8. The Native American Legacy. Among the film's most memorable performances came from Chief Dan George as Lone Wait. At 76 years old, he brought dignity and humor to the role, but working on set was not without challenges. Age made it difficult for him to memorize lengthy dialogue, and he sometimes struggled to deliver lines exactly as written. Rather than seeing this as a problem, Clint Eastwood took a supportive approach. To help George, Eastwood would quietly mouth the lines during takes or encourage him to improvise instead of sticking rigidly to the script. What resulted was dialogue that sounded natural and heartfelt, perfectly fitting the character. George's warm presence and timing brought authenticity to the film that no script alone could capture. Audiences quickly fell in love with Lone Wait, and critics praised George for nearly stealing the movie. His performance not only provided comic relief, but also gave the story emotional weight, helping the film stand out as one of the few westerns of the time to portray Native American characters with depth and respect. Number 9. Accusations of exploitation. While the film was praised for giving Native American characters meaningful roles, not everyone agreed with how the production handled representation. Some critics and observers later pointed out that the Cherokee performers hired for the movie were paid modest wages and had little influence over how their culture was portrayed on screen. Their input, when offered, was often overshadowed by the demands of Hollywood storytelling. This created a complicated legacy. On one hand, the Outlaw Josey Wales stood out among westerns of its era for portraying Native American characters as allies and fully developed individuals rather than as one-dimensional figures. On the other hand, questions lingered over whether the production truly honored the communities it depicted, or if it leaned too heavily on familiar stereotypes. For audiences at the time, the inclusion of characters like Lone Waite and Little Moonlight felt refreshing and progressive. Yet looking back, it's clear that the film's effort to spotlight Native American roles was both groundbreaking and imperfect, leaving behind a mix of admiration and criticism. Number 10. Filming with dangerous stunts. Action was at the heart of the Outlaw Josey Wales, and that meant staging chase scenes, shootouts, and horse falls that demanded skill and precision. During the 1970s, safety standards on set were not as strict as they are today, and stunt coordination often relied on experience rather than detailed regulations. Horses were pushed through complex maneuvers, riders performed risky falls, and the film's energy came from the rawness of these sequences. While the results looked thrilling on screen, behind the scenes there were concerns about the risks involved. Stories circulated that some animals were injured during the more elaborate stunts, though the production worked to keep such incidents out of the spotlight. For the cast and crew, it was a reminder of how demanding and unforgiving stunt work could be in that era of filmmaking. The intensity of these scenes paid off visually, giving the film a gritty authenticity that audiences loved. But it also highlighted the physical toll required to capture the realism of frontier life, where danger was never far from the saddle. Number 11. The scene that sparked a coup. One of the most famous turning points behind the scenes came from what seemed like a simple sequence. Kaufman had scouted the perfect dune for Josey to ride across against the setting sun, and even marked the spot with a bottle so the crew could return. But shifting sands buried the marker, and Kaufman insisted they search until the exact location was found. Hours slipped away as the light faded, while frustration grew among the crew. Eastwood, focused on efficiency, suggested Kaufman drive out to continue the search. While the director was gone, Eastwood seized the moment, ordering the scene filmed elsewhere before the sun disappeared. When Kaufman returned, he was furious, feeling his authority as director had been openly challenged. That moment marked the breaking point. The clash revealed the deep divide between Kaufman's perfectionist style and Eastwood's practical approach. Soon after, Eastwood would formally take control of the entire production, ensuring the Outlaw Josey Wales carried his stamp from beginning to end. Number 12. Spitting as a hazard. One of the defining traits of Josey Wales was his habit of chewing and spitting tobacco, a detail that gave the character an unmistakable edge. Clint Eastwood decided to make it as authentic as possible, using real tobacco during filming. While it added grit to the role, it also created unexpected problems on set. Crew members had to be mindful of where scenes were staged, as the constant spitting left areas messy and less than sanitary. Reports circulated that this habit caused genuine discomfort among extras and crew, with some even concerned about health risks. At a time when sets weren't as strictly managed for hygiene, the issue became a quiet but recurring annoyance. Still, Eastwood remained convinced that it was essential for the character's realism, refusing to compromise by switching to substitutes. The result was a performance that audiences found memorable, even if it came at the expense of behind-the-scenes convenience. Josey's sharp glare and steady aim may have defined the character, but his ever-present spit bucket left its own mark on the production. Number 13. Improvising the lines. Some of the most memorable moments in the movie didn't come directly from the script. Chief Dan George, who played Lone Waite, often had difficulty memorizing his lines, and this created challenges during filming. Instead of forcing him to stick word for word to the dialogue, Clint Eastwood encouraged him to deliver the essence of the lines in his own words. The result was dialogue that felt spontaneous and deeply authentic. George's dry humor and quiet wisdom resonated because it didn't sound rehearsed, it sounded lived in. One example was his timing in scenes where humor undercut tension, making the audience both laugh and reflect. His performance blended warmth with sharp insight, shaping Lone Waite into one of the film's most beloved characters. Eastwood's flexibility turned what could have been a limitation into one of the production's greatest strengths. By allowing George to improvise, the movie gained a layer of realism that still stands out, reminding viewers that sometimes the best moments come from letting actors simply be themselves. Number 14. a cinematographer's shadows. The striking look of the outlaw Josey Wales owed much to cinematographer Bruce Surtees, a longtime collaborator of Clint Eastwood. Known in Hollywood as the Prince of Darkness for his mastery of low-light photography, Surtees used natural shadows to give the film its distinct, moody atmosphere. His style avoided flashy tricks, focusing instead on letting landscapes and lighting tell their own story. Working with Eastwood's preference for efficiency, Surtees found ways to capture sweeping vistas and intimate close-ups without overcomplicating setups. By relying on natural light during the autumn shoot, he created visuals that felt both authentic and painterly. Wide desert plains, rugged hills, and soft-lit interiors all carried his subtle signature. Audiences may not have known his name, but they felt his impact. The cinematography gave Josey Wales a tone that set it apart from other westerns of the era. Less polished, more lived in, and hauntingly beautiful. It was proof that visuals could shape emotion as powerfully as dialogue or music. Number 15. A score with subtle power. Music played a quiet yet vital role in shaping the tone of the outlaw Josey Wales. For the score, Clint Eastwood turned to Jerry Fielding, a composer already known for his work on westerns like The Wild Bunch. Fielding approached the film with restraint, crafting music that underscored emotion rather than overwhelming it. His themes carried a melancholy edge, echoing the sorrow and resilience at the heart of Josey's story. Unlike the sweeping orchestral scores of earlier westerns, Fielding's work leaned into subtlety. Gentle strings and understated motifs gave the movie a haunting rhythm, allowing silence and natural sounds to do much of the heavy lifting. This quieter approach mirrored Eastwood's directing style, minimalist, direct, and deeply effective. The Academy took notice, honoring Fielding with a nomination for Best Original Score. While he didn't take home the award, his music has endured as one of the film's defining features. It remains a perfect example of how restraint can sometimes create more power than grandeur. Number 16. Echoes of Sergio Leone. Viewers familiar with Clint Eastwood's earlier westerns immediately noticed a sense of déjà vu in the outlaw Josey Wales. The film carried clear echoes of Sergio Leone, the Italian director who had shaped Eastwood's career with the Dollars trilogy. From sweeping panoramic shots of rugged landscapes to extreme close-ups that lingered on eyes and expressions, the visual DNA of Leone's style was woven throughout the movie. Eastwood himself acknowledged the influence. He admired Leone's ability to mix beauty with brutality, and many techniques he learned while working in Italy were brought into Josey Wales. The difference, however, was tone. Unlike Leone's mysterious drifter known only as the man with no name, Josey's character was given a backstory, a family, and a clear emotional journey. By blending Leone's cinematic language with his own storytelling sensibilities, Eastwood created a western that felt both familiar and fresh. It paid homage to the past while carving its own place in history, bridging European style with American grit. Number 17. Historical backlash. Not everyone welcomed the outlaw Josey Wales when it was first released. While audiences praised its story and action, some historians and descendants of Civil War families raised concerns about how the film portrayed guerrilla fighters. In real history, such groups were often known for harsh raids and widespread destruction, yet the movie softened those realities, presenting Josey and his allies more as tragic survivors than ruthless combatants. Family members of both Union and Confederate soldiers worried that the film romanticized a painful chapter of American history. They argued that it blurred the lines between fact and fiction, shaping public perception of a conflict that had left scars across generations. For them, the story's sympathetic lens risked overshadowing the hardship endured by real communities. Although the criticism did not stop the film's success, it added another layer to its legacy. Josey Wales became more than just a western. It was part of the ongoing debate over how history is remembered, retold, and sometimes reimagined through the power of cinema. Number 18. On-set mistakes. Even a carefully crafted classic like The Outlaw Josey Wales wasn't free of errors. Attentive viewers have spotted several mistakes that slipped through, with some standing out as particularly amusing. During the climactic gunfight, Josey and his companions face off against a group of soldiers. Although only about 15 men are shown crossing the creek, far more appear to fall in the battle that follows, making the numbers oddly inconsistent. Another slip comes earlier in the story, when Josey unleashes a Gatling gun. Historically, the weapon could only hold a limited number of rounds, but on screen, it fires far beyond its capacity, mowing down enemies without pause. For sharp-eyed fans, the moment is exciting, but clearly stretches believability. These errors never distracted most audiences, who were caught up in the intensity of the action. Yet, for those who enjoy looking closer, they serve as reminders that even the most iconic films carry small imperfections that slip by in the heat of production. Number 19. A runtime that defied the rules. Most westerns of the 1970s followed a tight formula, often running under 2 hours to keep theaters cycling audiences quickly. The Outlaw Josey Wales broke that mold with a runtime of 2 hours and 15 minutes, making it unusually long for its genre at the time. Eastwood believed the story needed space to breathe, and he resisted any attempt to cut it down to fit industry expectations. The extended length allowed the film to do more than tell a tale of revenge. Characters like Lone Waite, Grandma Sarah, and Little Moonlight were given time to develop, making their journeys meaningful rather than rushed. The pacing echoed the wide landscapes and long rides of frontier life, pulling viewers into Josey's world with a deliberate rhythm. In hindsight, the decision to keep the movie sprawling was a bold one. Rather than being trimmed into a straightforward action piece, it stood as an epic that blended character, culture, and conflict into something greater than a typical Western adventure. Number 20. Eastwood's Quiet Rebellion. When Warner Brothers suggested trimming half an hour from the film, Clint Eastwood refused to budge. A studio executive was sent to deliver the message directly, expecting a compromise. Instead, Eastwood calmly told him he was welcome to make the edits himself, because he'd be across the street at Paramount working on a new deal. The remark wasn't just defiance, it was a subtle reminder of Eastwood's star power and negotiating strength. The bluff worked, the studio backed down, and the film was released at its full length. By standing his ground, Eastwood proved he could not only direct, but also protect his creative vision. That quiet act of rebellion helped shape the Outlaw Josey Wales into the sprawling Western audiences still admire today. Number 21. The film that defied a genre's death. By the mid-1970s, Westerns had nearly vanished from Hollywood's spotlight. Studios believed audiences no longer cared for frontier stories, especially those tied to the Civil War. Against that backdrop, the Outlaw Josey Wales was seen as a gamble, with many doubting its chances at the box office. The doubts proved unfounded. Made on a modest budget of just under $4 million, the film went on to gross over $30 million, turning into one of Eastwood's most profitable projects. Its success showed that audiences still had an appetite for Westerns, if they were told with grit, heart, and style. Rather than fading with the genre, Josey Wales stood out as proof that the Western could evolve. Its triumph breathed life back into a fading tradition, cementing Eastwood not just as a star, but as a director with the power to reshape an entire genre. Number 22. Orson Welles was obsessed. Not every filmmaker wins the admiration of a legend, but the Outlaw Josey Wales did. Orson Welles, the visionary behind Citizen Kane, became one of its most vocal admirers. He reportedly watched the movie 4 times in theaters, praising it as a Western worthy of comparison to the works of John Ford and Howard Hawks. For Welles, it wasn't just another Clint Eastwood film. It was a masterpiece of American cinema. Such high praise carried weight. Welles's recognition signaled that Eastwood had moved beyond being a popular actor to becoming a director respected by some of the greatest names in the business. It was a turning point in how Hollywood viewed him, proving that his directorial choices were not only commercially successful, but also critically admired. Number 23. 9 Years Until Another Western. After the success of the Outlaw Josey Wales, many expected Clint Eastwood to return quickly to the Western genre. Instead, he stepped away for nearly a decade. During that time, he focused on crime thrillers, dramas, and even comedies, deliberately keeping his distance from frontier tales. It wasn't until 1985 that he rode back into the saddle with Pale Rider. Critics noted the film felt like a spiritual continuation of Josey Wales, carrying the same themes of loss, justice, and redemption. By waiting so long, Eastwood avoided being typecast and gave himself time to grow as a filmmaker. The long pause also gave Josey Wales room to stand alone as its own achievement. When he finally returned, audiences saw not just a Western star, but a director with a clear voice, capable of shaping the genre on his own terms. Number 24. The Forgotten Return of Josey Wales. A decade after Clint Eastwood's classic, another version of the story appeared. The Return of Josey Wales in 1986. This time, Eastwood wasn't involved. The film was directed by and starred Michael Parks, based loosely on the novel The Vengeance Trail of Josey Wales. Expectations were modest, but fans hoping for the same magic were disappointed. Without Eastwood's presence, the movie lacked the grit and emotion that had defined the original. Critics dismissed it as a weak imitation, and audiences largely ignored it. Over time, the sequel faded almost entirely from memory, remembered only by devoted Western enthusiasts. The failure of this follow-up reinforced how central Eastwood had been to the character. It made clear that The Outlaw Josey Wales was more than just a story. It was a personal vision that could not be easily recreated. Number 25. Eastwood reveals the true message. Years after its release, Clint Eastwood reflected on what The Outlaw Josey Wales truly meant to him. While many saw it as a straightforward revenge story, Eastwood explained that at its heart, the film carried a message about reconciliation. Josey begins consumed by anger, but over time he builds a new family from people of different backgrounds, learning the value of unity over conflict. Eastwood later described the film as an anti-war statement, shaped by his own views during the 1970s. Rather than glorifying violence, it showed how survival and healing come from leaving bitterness behind. That deeper layer helped the movie endure. More than just a Western, it became a reflection on forgiveness, resilience, and the search for peace. Ideas that gave the story timeless relevance long after the gunsmoke cleared. The Outlaw Josey Wales began as a troubled production, but emerged as one of the most enduring Westerns ever made. From a little-known novel to a film that overcame conflicts, risks, and doubts, it became the work that solidified Clint Eastwood's reputation as a director of substance. Its blend of grit, heart, and timeless themes has ensured its place in both cinematic history and the National Film Registry. If you enjoyed uncovering these 25 hidden secrets, make sure to like and subscribe for more stories behind the movies you love. Which of these secrets surprised you most? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear them.